In the winter of 1848, on the Hartwell Plantation near Charleston, South Carolina, a mystery began to unfold that would challenge everything physicians thought they knew about human life. Celia, an enslaved woman, gave birth to a child under circumstances that were already unusual. But nothing could prepare the medical world or the people living on that plantation for what came next. From the very first moments, Celia knew something was wrong. When she looked at her daughter, Denina, she felt a deep, instinctive horror. "She ain't my child," Celia whispered to the few she trusted, her voice sharp with fear. "It's like something wearing a baby's skin." 3 physicians, summoned by the plantation's owner, Edmund Hartwell, came to examine the child. They were trained men of science, accustomed to the strange and the rare, but even they could not ignore the unease that prickled their skin. Dr. Saunders, attempting rationality, suggested difficulties in maternal bonding were not unusual. But Celia interrupted him, her words cutting. "You seen her. You examined her. You know something ain't right. That child ain't natural." The doctors measured, weighed, and recorded, noting that Denina's growth rate was unprecedented. Her development far exceeded any known pattern of human biology. But it was not just her size that disturbed them. Denina seemed to understand things no baby should comprehend. Aware of the people and the hierarchy around her in a way that suggested intelligence far beyond her age. As the weeks passed, the Hartwell plantation community grew uneasy. The enslaved workers whispered of the child's unnatural knowledge, watching her as if she were a creature studying them rather than a human infant. Thomas Gaines, an overseer, felt the first tangible threat. Drunk and belligerent, he struck Celia in the kitchen one evening, and the child, barely 17 months old, intervened in a way that would chill anyone who witnessed it. She spoke, her voice clear and cold. "You should not have done that." Witnesses later said her eyes seemed to burn with something they could not describe. Gaines left, unsettled, but the consequences would follow sooner than anyone imagined. By the next morning, Thomas Gaines was dead. Found in his cabin, his body bore no visible wounds, no signs of struggle, yet his face was frozen in terror. The physicians investigated, perplexed, recording in their notes that his heart had stopped, as if all electrical impulses had ceased at once. No explanation could account for it. Fear took root on the plantation. Denina was no longer a child in the eyes of those around her. She was something else entirely. Celia, trapped in her own horror and unable to love, moved through her days mechanically, caring for Denina while dreading what her daughter could become. By the end of 1848, what had begun as a bizarre medical curiosity had grown into a full-blown nightmare, and the questions it raised would haunt everyone who witnessed it. By early 1849, Denina's development had reached an alarming pace. At just 20 months old, she had the physical stature and cognitive abilities of a child 4 years old or more. She stood over 3 feet tall, spoke with grammatical precision, and solved problems that confounded even the most educated adults on the plantation. But it was not her intelligence alone that terrified those around her. It was the awareness behind it. The chilling detachment in her gaze. When the physicians returned for another examination, they found themselves unnerved. Denina observed them as much as they observed her, answering questions with deliberate clarity that suggested a mind fully aware of its own power. "People are often frightened of things they do not understand," she said coldly to Dr. Pritchard. "Are you frightened because you do not understand me? Or because you are beginning to understand and the understanding frightens you?" The doctors, despite their training, could not find words. Their instruments confirmed the impossible. A child aging at twice the normal rate, learning faster than any human should, with awareness and reasoning that approached adult levels. Yet Edmund Hartwell, blinded by greed and the promise of value, dismissed their warnings. To him, Denina was a remarkable property, an asset whose rarity only increased her worth. Whatever medical curiosity she represents, "She is still my property," he said, unconcerned with what lay beneath. The enslaved community, however, knew better. Samuel's journals describe a pervasive dread. Workers avoided Celia and Denina, finding excuses to keep their distance. "That child ain't natural," Ruth, the elder, whispered. "She going to bring death. Ain't never seen nothing like her." Even simple acts of care became fraught with fear. Celia, once capable of nurturing, had retreated into herself, her body performing the motions of motherhood without the warmth or love one might expect. The tension reached a terrifying climax on a cold February night. February 23, 1849. Screams tore through the enslaved quarters, waking everyone. Celia's cabin was engulfed in flames, the fire spreading with unnatural speed despite the damp winter air. By the time the overseer, William Fletcher, organized a bucket brigade, the cabin had collapsed into burning rubble in the ruins. 2 bodies were found, an adult woman and a child. Both burned beyond recognition. Dr. Saunders, summoned to examine the remains, noted disturbing evidence suggesting the fire had been deliberately set. Doors were barred from the inside, oil lamps were broken and scattered. Accelerants used, actions inconsistent with a mere accident. Yet the positioning of the bodies suggested neither had attempted to escape. Celia and Denina had died in place, or perhaps had been unconscious before the fire consumed them. For the enslaved workers, the truth was clear. Samuel wrote that Ruth said Celia did what had to be done. Couldn't stand watching it get stronger, knowing it would eventually bring death to all of us. In a single act of despair and courage, Celia had ended her own life and her child's, preventing a future that even the most rational minds could not comprehend. The authorities and Edmund Hartwell accepted the fire as an accident, recording it as the result of a troubled mind handling fire negligently. But the fear that had haunted the plantation for 2 years was gone. The impossible child, the one who grew too fast and knew too much, was no more. Yet the questions remained. What had truly occurred within Celia's body? Was Denina a child accelerated by some unknown condition, or something far more unnatural? And if such a thing could happen once, could it happen again? With Celia and Denina gone, the Hartwell plantation settled into an uneasy silence. The enslaved workers moved through their daily tasks with a mix of relief and lingering fear. The shadow that had haunted them for 2 years, the unnatural child and her mother's quiet terror, was gone. Samuel's journal reflects the deep complexity of their emotions: grief for Celia, a grim acknowledgement of her courage, and a cautious hope that nothing like Denina would ever arise again. Edmund Hartwell, for his part, returned to life as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. To him, the fire was a tragic accident, the loss of property unfortunate, but not enough to warrant reflection. He hired new overseers, enforced discipline, and continued operations. The plantation's business went on, but the story of Denina, the child who should not have existed, remained unspoken. Hidden behind the official narrative of accident and misfortune, the physicians, meanwhile, were left with their memories and the sealed reports. Dr. Pritchard, Dr. Saunders, and Dr. Strickland had documented everything. A pregnancy progressing from invisible to full term in less than a week. A child aging at twice the normal rate, exhibiting intelligence far beyond her years, and a presence that inspired fear in all who encountered her. Their reports, sent to the Charleston Medical Society, were locked away, deemed too extraordinary and potentially disturbing for public knowledge. The society instructed them to cease observation, and no further investigation would be tolerated. Each doctor took a different path after the case. Dr. Pritchard moved north, leaving Charleston behind for a hospital in Philadelphia. Dr. Saunders returned to family property in Virginia. Abandoning active practice, Dr. Strickland retired entirely, focusing on investments and avoiding discussion of medicine. None ever spoke publicly about the case again. The sealed reports became a quiet testament to the impossible, hidden in archives. Their contents known only to a handful of men who carried the secret to their graves. Samuel, the enslaved observer, escaped during the chaos of the Civil War, bringing with him journals that decades later would provide the only personal account of what had truly occurred. His writings revealed the fear, the mystery, and the tragedy experienced by those who lived closest to the unnatural events. They were witnesses to something beyond human understanding, trapped in a world that refused to acknowledge it. Celia's choice, whether born of maternal fear, desperation, or clarity of foresight, left questions that would never be answered. Did Denina represent a medical anomaly, a rare genetic condition, or something beyond science? Was Thomas Gaines's death truly natural, or a manifestation of something in the child that defied explanation? And most haunting of all, if such a phenomenon could occur once, could it happen again? The site of Celia's cabin, once the epicenter of fear and mystery, is now lost to time and urban development. But the story remains, a dark whisper of what lies beyond the limits of human understanding. A pregnancy invisible to science, a child who outpaced nature, and a mother's ultimate sacrifice. It is a tale that challenges everything we believe about biology, morality, and the fragility of human perception. Some knowledge, it seems, is too dangerous to pursue. Some phenomena exist only to remind us that not all mysteries can or should be solved. What do you think? Was Celia protecting the world or destroying something innocent? Could Denina's existence ever be explained, or does it belong to the realm of the impossible? Comment below with your theories. If you want more dark historical mysteries hidden from public memory, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this story with someone who loves secrets the world tried to forget. Even decades later, the story of Celia and Denina haunts the imagination. What occurred on the Hartwell plantation was more than a tragic accident. It was a convergence of fear, mystery, and the limits of human understanding. From the rapid, impossible growth of Denina to her extraordinary intelligence and awareness, the events challenge what we know about biology, development, and the boundaries between life and the inexplicable. Historians, medical experts, and curious minds alike are left with questions that cannot be answered. What force caused Denina's accelerated growth? Was it a mutation, a previously unknown medical phenomenon, or something entirely beyond science? And Celia, did she act out of rational fear, maternal instinct, or an intuition that the rest of the world could not comprehend? Samuel's journal suggests the enslaved workers believed Denina to be dangerous, and perhaps they understood something deeper than anyone else. Their fear was not superstition, it was a survival instinct. That it's easy to judge Celia from a modern perspective, to see her actions as extreme or horrifying. But imagine being in her position, a mother who bore a child unlike any other, one who developed faster than nature intended, one whose very presence inspired fear. Her decision to end both their lives, as tragic as it was, might have been the only way she believed to protect everyone around her. The fire that destroyed the cabin was not just a literal conflagration. It was the symbolic end of something that should never have existed in the first place. Even now, when we look back at the sealed reports of the Charleston Medical Society, we confront the limits of authority, knowledge, and morality. 3 physicians observed what they could not explain, documented what should have been impossible, and were ordered to bury their findings. Their sealed reports remind us that some truths are too dangerous, too incomprehensible for public scrutiny. They contain evidence of a pregnancy that went from invisible to full term in less than a week, a child who aged at twice the normal human rate, and a mind that developed even faster than her body. And yet, for all the mystery, there's a deeply human story at the heart of it. Celia's fear, Denina's unnatural existence, and the silent understanding of the enslaved community reveal the ways humans respond to what they cannot control. Some phenomena are beyond explanation, but their consequences are profoundly real. In the case of the Hartwell Plantation, those consequences led to death, secrecy, and a legacy of unanswered questions. Perhaps the most chilling thought is this: if something like Denina could exist once, could it happen again? Could there be phenomena lying hidden in the world, waiting to be discovered, or to repeat history in ways that defy our understanding? I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Celia acted correctly, or did she destroy something that could have been innocent? Could Denina's development be explained through science, or is it something entirely supernatural? Comment your theories below. If this story intrigued you, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this series with someone who loves dark historical mysteries that challenge everything we think we know. The Hartwell story is more than just a tale from history. It is a reminder that some truths are hidden, some events resist explanation, and some mysteries are never meant to be solved. After the tragic fire that claimed both Celia and Denina, the Hartwell Plantation returned to a grim routine. The enslaved workers, though relieved that the immediate threat was gone, were haunted by the memory of what had occurred. Samuel's journals record their cautious whispers, their lingering fear of what had been born and what had died. Even when the physical presence of Denina was gone, her shadow remained, etched into the minds of those who had seen her unnatural intelligence and power. Edmund Hartwell, blinded by his wealth and entitlement, viewed the loss merely as the destruction of property. For him, the fire was inconvenient, a loss of a valuable slave child and a woman who had served him. The fear, the moral implications, the questions left unanswered, these did not trouble him. His inability to perceive the depth of what had transpired stands in stark contrast to the understanding of those who had lived closely with Celia and Denina. For the enslaved community, however, life was never quite the same. Old Ruth's words lingered. Celia was brave. It'd take a special kind of strength to do what she did. That strength was born from despair and necessity. Ruth, Samuel, and the others understood that the child was not simply a human being. They had witnessed something that violated the natural order, something that instilled fear at a primal level. And in that understanding, they saw the courage it took for Celia to act, even as it cost her life and that of her child. Medical history would keep silent. The Charleston Medical Society's sealed reports ensured that no further investigation would occur. The three physicians, Drs. Saunders, Pritchard, and Strickland, left Charleston, carrying the knowledge of the impossible within them. None spoke publicly again of what they had documented. They had seen a human mind develop faster than human biology should allow, observed a child's cognitive abilities outpacing even her physical growth, and witnessed a death that coincided suspiciously with that intelligence. And then, they saw the ultimate act of maternal desperation, a fire that erased both mother and child from the world. Yet the mystery did not vanish. Even decades later, historians who uncover Samuel's journals are struck by the accounts. They read of a child who was more than a child, of a mother who bore an unimaginable burden, and of an enslaved community who lived under fear and awe. The story of Celia and Denina exists in fragments, in charred remains, in sealed medical reports, in whispered recollections passed down among the enslaved. It is a story that refuses closure, a tale of impossible growth, forbidden knowledge, and the moral dilemmas of survival. Perhaps the most unsettling part is how the narrative challenges our understanding of what is possible. Could a child truly develop at twice the natural rate, possessing intelligence and awareness far beyond human norms? Could a mother foresee the danger and make the ultimate sacrifice? These questions remain unanswered, their weight left to history and to imagination. In the end, the Hartwell Plantation became a place of quiet, its dark secrets buried beneath the soil and in sealed archives. But the memory of Celia and Denina lives on in the journals, in the warnings of those who feared her, and in the unsettling notion that sometimes human life can take forms we cannot explain, and morality can demand choices we cannot imagine. So I ask you, if you were in Celia's position, what would you have done? Would you have accepted the unimaginable reality of your child, or acted as she did to protect those around you? Comment your thoughts below, and let's discuss the blurred line between fear, instinct, and morality. The story of Celia and Danina ends in fire, but its echoes stretched far beyond that night in February 1849. For the enslaved community, the fear that had dominated their lives for 2 years gradually gave way to cautious relief. No longer did they witness the uncanny intelligence of Danina, or feel the oppressive dread that seemed to emanate from the child. The shadow that had hung over the quarters lifted, though the memory of her presence lingered, a reminder of the extraordinary and terrifying possibility that life could defy understanding. For Edmund Hartwell, the death of Danina was simply the loss of property, though even he could not entirely deny a flicker of unease. Something about the circumstances, Gaines's mysterious death, the child's rapid growth, the fear in Celia's eyes haunted him quietly, though he would never allow it to trouble his public image or his calculations of wealth. He continued to manage the plantation, bringing in new enslaved workers and attempting to restore order. But the legacy of Celia's child, the extraordinary case that defied science, remained buried in the sealed archives of the Charleston Medical Society, a secret that the outside world would never know. The 3 physicians, Saunders, Pritchard, and Strickland, dispersed from Charleston, each carrying a burden of knowledge that would shape the rest of their lives. They had seen the impossible. They had recorded it with precision, measured the child's accelerated growth, and documented cognitive abilities that surpassed natural human development. Yet, they could act in no meaningful way. The child was legally property, and the society's directives forbade further investigation. Science had limits, and they had reached them. None spoke again of Danina or the events at Hartwell, and as they aged, the memory became a quiet, unspoken weight, a reminder that not all phenomena fit neatly into human understanding. Meanwhile, Samuel continued his secret journal, chronicling the lives of those around him, preserving the truth for posterity. Decades later, his writings would surface, providing historians with a rare glimpse into events that defied explanation. The tale of Celia and Danina is preserved through his words: the fear, the awe, the impossible development of the child, and the ultimate act of maternal sacrifice. History remembers the plantation, the slaveholders, and the economics. But Samuel's accounts ensure that the extraordinary story of a mother and child, and the dangers they embodied, is not entirely lost. What this story ultimately leaves us with is a question, one that resonates far beyond the Hartwell plantation. How much do we truly understand about life, growth, and the limits of human nature? Celia's actions, though extreme, were driven by a clear perception of danger. Danina, whose mind and body exceeded every natural boundary, represented a force beyond comprehension. In the end, the mother chose the safety of others over her own maternal instincts, a decision both tragic and profound. So as we close the final chapter of this dark historical mystery, I leave you with this thought: sometimes, the most terrifying truths are the ones we cannot prove, the ones science cannot explain, and the ones morality forces us to confront in the silence of our own imaginations. If this story unsettled you, challenged what you thought possible, and left you questioning the boundaries of human understanding, be sure to like this video, subscribe for more forgotten chapters of history, and share your thoughts in the comments below. History is full of shadows, and sometimes, the darkest tales are the ones that never leave a mark on the official record, but they remain alive in memory, waiting for those willing to remember. Even after the fire that claimed Celia and Danina, the story of the Hartwell plantation did not fade entirely. Among the enslaved community, whispers of the child who should not have existed lingered for years. Old Ruth, Samuel's companion and witness to events, carried her knowledge quietly, warning younger generations of the dangers that sometimes hide in plain sight. For them, Denina had become a legend, a reminder that the world holds mysteries that cannot be explained, and that some forms of power are born into existence far beyond human control. Historians, when later reviewing Samuel's journals, often marveled at the detailed accounts of a child who defied biology, who aged at double the normal rate and possessed a mind far ahead of her years. Scholars debated whether this was the result of a rare genetic anomaly, a psychological phenomenon, or something entirely beyond science. Yet the official records, sealed by the Charleston Medical Society, ensured that public knowledge remained constrained. The truth, as it often does, was locked away, leaving only speculation, fear, and the fragments of those who lived closest to it. One question haunted every reader of Samuel's accounts. Was Celia's action justified? She had chosen to end her own life and that of her child, an act that, on the surface, appears horrifying. But when viewed through the lens of the extraordinary Denina's impossible intelligence, her rapid development, and the sheer danger perceived by those who knew her best, Celia's decision takes on a complex, almost sacrificial dimension. Was she preventing future deaths? Protecting her community? Or was she acting from fear, overwhelmed by forces no mother could control? The ambiguity remains, and perhaps that is precisely the point. History is rarely clear-cut, and morality often exists in shades of gray. The story of Denina also challenges our understanding of human development. What if accelerated growth, both physical and cognitive, is possible under conditions unknown to science? What if certain phenomena lie just beyond our observation, waiting to emerge in ways that defy logic? Denina's brief life forces us to consider the limits of what we know, and the terrifying possibilities of what we cannot. It also serves as a cautionary tale. The world may harbor forces that are neither wholly natural nor entirely supernatural. And sometimes, survival demands decisions we cannot imagine making. As we conclude this series, it is worth reflecting on the enduring lessons. Knowledge is a double-edged sword. Curiosity may reveal wonders, but some truths are dangerous, too profound for society to process. Fear can guide us to protection or to tragedy. And most haunting of all, the past holds stories that challenge our assumptions, demanding we remember that history is more than dates, names, and events. It is the lived experience of people. Sometimes ordinary, sometimes extraordinary, and sometimes impossible to fully comprehend. So, what do you think happened at the Hartwell Plantation? Was Denina a child out of time, a scientific anomaly, or something far stranger? Was Celia a tragic hero, or was she acting out of irrational fear? Comment below with your theories. Let your imagination explore the mysteries the official record hides. And if you want to uncover more hidden and chilling stories from the pages of history, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and join me as we explore forgotten chapters that challenge what we think we know about the past. History is full of secrets. Some are forgotten for a reason. But tonight we remembered one. Even after the ashes of February 1849 cooled, the story of Celia and Denina continued to haunt those who had lived through it. Among the enslaved workers, the memory of the child who grew faster than nature intended remained a ghostly presence. Samuel, having recorded every detail in his journal, became the keeper of a story that no one in authority wanted told. The plantation returned to routine life, but fear lingered in corners, whispered in cautious tones, as if speaking too loudly might call Denina's presence back from beyond the grave. Modern readers might struggle to reconcile what Samuel described with reason. A pregnancy progressing from invisible to full term in less than a week. A child aging at twice the normal rate. With intelligence that bordered on precognition, these are events that defy everything we know about human biology. Could it have been a rare medical anomaly? A genetic mutation gone so far beyond documented science that the physicians themselves were powerless to intervene? Or, as some theorists suggest, something beyond natural explanation, a consciousness that was never meant to inhabit a human body? These questions remain unanswered, the answers locked away in the sealed records of the Charleston Medical Society. Celia's choice to end both her life and Denina's continues to provoke debate. Was it a final act of courage, a calculated sacrifice to prevent a greater catastrophe? Or a tragic decision fueled by terror, the instinctive reaction of a mother unable to reconcile her child's unnatural growth and intelligence with her own sense of morality? Within the pages of Samuel's journals, we catch glimpses of her torment, a woman exhausted, living in fear, performing the bare minimum to survive while protecting a secret none could understand. Her actions, though horrifying, were deeply human. They reveal the limits of endurance when confronted by forces beyond comprehension. The physicians, Saunders, Pritchard, and Strickland, all left Charleston afterward, unable to reconcile their scientific understanding with the reality they had documented. Their sealed reports, now gathering dust in archives, are the only evidence that this extraordinary phenomenon existed. And even with these documents, we are left with uncertainty. The case challenges the foundations of what we think is possible and forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the natural world produces anomalies that cannot be explained, controlled, or predicted. As we reflect on the Hartwell Plantation, we are reminded that history is not just a series of dates and events. It is the lived experience of individuals, often containing mysteries that resist interpretation. Denina's brief life, Celia's tragic choice, and the fear that gripped the enslaved community provide a story that is at once terrifying, heartbreaking, and awe-inspiring. They show us the fragility of human understanding when confronted with the extraordinary, and remind us that some truths, while real, may be impossible to fully accept. So now, I ask you, what do you think of Denina? Was she a child of science, a supernatural anomaly, or something entirely different? Was Celia's decision justified, or was it an act of needless tragedy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more chilling historical mysteries and forgotten stories that challenge everything we think we know, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and continue this journey with me into the darkest corners of history, because some stories are meant to be remembered, and some are meant to haunt us forever. Long after the fire, long after Celia and Denina were gone, the Hartwell Plantation carried a shadow that could never fully be erased. For Edmund Hartwell, the loss of property was a financial inconvenience, but for those who had witnessed the events, the enslaved workers, the memory of what had transpired was a deep, unshakable truth. Samuel's journals speak of an invisible tension that lingered even after life seemingly returned to normal. The fear that something unnatural had walked among them, and that it could, in some unknown way, return. Denina's story raises profound questions about the nature of life and human development. Could a child really develop cognitively at a rate beyond natural limits? Could intelligence, awareness, and physical growth accelerate simultaneously in a way never before documented? Modern science might struggle to answer these questions. Genetic anomalies, rare metabolic disorders, or accelerated developmental syndromes may explain some aspects. Yet nothing known could account for the precision of Denina's understanding, the deliberate way she observed others, or the chilling incidents that culminated in Thomas Gaines's death. Celia's actions also remain difficult to interpret. To some, her choice to end her own life and Denina's was an act of ultimate protection, a recognition that what she had brought into the world could not be allowed to reach maturity. To others, it is a tragedy born of fear, a mother destroying what she could not control. Samuel's entries suggest he understood her decision, even if he could not condone it. He saw a woman living under constant dread, weighed down by a knowledge that others could not share or validate. The lines between moral responsibility and survival blurred in the harsh reality of the plantation, creating a choice that no outsider could easily judge. The physician's role in this story also invites reflection. Dr. Saunders, Pritchard, and Strickland were men of science, bound by observation, measurement, and the limits of contemporary knowledge. Their documentation stands as a rare glimpse into a phenomenon that defied explanation. Yet even they could not reconcile their observations with the world as they understood it. Their retreat from Charleston, their avoidance of public discussion, and the sealing of their reports serve as a chilling reminder that some truths are too dangerous or too incomprehensible to confront openly. And what of the plantation itself? Over time, the site of Celia's cabin was lost to history, swallowed by development and the passing of decades. The physical evidence disappeared, leaving only stories, memories, and a sealed archive. Yet the psychological imprint remained. For the enslaved community, the events of 1848 to 1849 were never just history, they were a warning. A tale of what could happen when nature or something beyond nature intervenes in ways that defy understanding. As we look back today, Dineena's story is both a warning and a mystery. It challenges our understanding of biology, psychology, and human experience. It asks us to consider what we would do if confronted with the impossible, and whether fear can ever justify extreme actions. It reminds us that history is not always neat, and that the most extraordinary stories are often hidden, sealed, and forgotten, sometimes for good reason. So I leave you with these questions. What truly happened at the Hartwell plantation? Was Dineena an anomaly of nature, or something else entirely? And was Celia a hero, a tragic figure, or both? Comment below with your theories, subscribe for more dark historical mysteries, and join me as we continue uncovering the stories history tried to bury. Because some truths are so extraordinary, they can only survive in whispers and in our imaginations.